Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and each week I'm joined by a panel of guests to discuss all things fandom and pop culture, primarily from a female perspective. You'll find everything from fanfic, to cosplay, to Schitt's Creek, to Supernatural, and everything in between. So put on your favorite piece of fandom merch, set aside that fanfic that you're writing about your OTP, and sit back and enjoy this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to this special episode of It's a Fandom Thing. Today, I am honored to be sitting down virtually and speaking with composer Lindsay Jones to talk about the podcast musical, Botanic Garden the Musical. Hi, Lindsay. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. It's such an interesting thing in the world of podcasting, to have like a musical be a podcast. So I know that was originally a play that Todd Logan, who is the playwright, wrote and then wanted to adapt into a musical. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came about and a little bit more about what the musical is about?
You bet. Okay, so the story of how the musical evolved is that in 2008, Todd presented this play, Botanic Garden, which was directed by Olympia Dukakis at Victory Gardens Theater in Chicago. And at the time, I was hired to be the composer and sound designer for this production of the play. And that means, so I compose music for like transition music, underscore music, things like that. So that was all instrumental music that was presented as part of the production. The show did very well. It got a great response. And then for the next extended period of time, the show would be picked up and run again over a number of years with these same actors reprising the roles, Carmen Roman as Kate and Jen Lemming as Jake. And so they toured the show. It toured all over the U.S. It played in a number of places in Illinois, and it was very successful. And then in 2018, Todd reached out to me and said, would you be interested in turning Botanic Garden into a musical? And I hadn't done a lot of writing for musicals at that point, but I really was like, well, what would happen if I did do this? And so I began this journey of slowly transforming the play into a musical. And what I would do is every couple of months, I would write some songs. I would fly to Chicago to meet with Todd and Ann Logan, who was the director of the piece, and sort of like present the songs for them to hear. And so slowly we built up 13 songs that are now in Botanic Garden the Musical. And I really feel like Botanic Garden the play, which is a wonderful play, and Botanic Garden the Musical are two similar but very different things that have a lot to offer audiences that I'm really excited to hear people's response to. The basic plot of Botanic Garden is we open on Kate, who is a woman in her 50s. She is waiting for a man to pick her up, to take her out on a date. They're going to go walk through the Botanic Garden. She's being advised by a man who's in the house with her, and we quickly learn that that man is Jake, who is Kate's dead husband. And the spirit of Jake is in the room with Kate, and she keeps wanting to cancel the date, and he's trying to get her to move forward with her life. And so then the plot of the musical is really about Kate and Jake sort of reliving both the highlights and the lowlights of their marriage in order to work through the things that they left unresolved so that hopefully they can both move on. Jake can move on to the afterlife and Kate can move on with her life and find a new life in herself. And it's fun. It's funny. It's touching. The music really sort of varies a lot from, sort of rock and roll to sensitive ballads to all sorts of things in between. The music is all played by one piano. So it's just two people and one piano in the show.
Oh, wow.
But yes, But I
That's
should add a
amazing.
caveat to this. Thank you. So there's a caveat to this, which is because I originally come from the world of sound design and I have extensive background in programming electronics and creating textures, sonic textures as part of my job. What we do is we use the piano, but then we also use loops of the piano and echoes of the piano, sort of fragments of the piano, so that as the story becomes more complicated, the music also becomes more complicated and a
Mhm.
real sonic journey as we're sort of trying to sift through these different memories. So, and it's just like any relationship, right? It seems so simple when you look at it from the outside, but the more you learn about any relationship, the more complicated it gets. And so that's what I was trying to do with the music is have something that seems simple, a single piano, easy to figure out. And yet at the same time, there maybe are layers of the onion that we peel back and discover that things are a lot more complex than we would see on the surface.
Wow, that's amazing though that it's one instrument, even if you are doing that layering. And especially when you're dealing with a story that is about grief, but also about a relationship and about letting go and healing. I would assume because you're saying it gets more complicated and more complicated the music does. So do the lyrics as well when you're like writing that, when you are working on that, are you like arranging it differently depending on who might be singing that song or stuff like that? Like how does that work?
So it's really interesting. The lyrics are a really interesting mix. Some songs, I literally took Todd's original script as it was written without changing a word
Uh,
and wrote songs to suit those lines as they were originally spoken in the play so that they're exact. And those don't necessarily rhyme, but they have a very specific cadence and rhythm. Todd's play sort of does a lot of like quick back and forth exchanges where people are kind of moving back and forth. And I found the rhythmic exchange of that dialogue really inspiring. And I thought, well, I don't need to write lyrics for this. These are great lyrics. But then other songs where previously, it might be a single line that would be in the play version. I would say, like, well, wait a minute. I'd really like to explore this moment and learn more about the emotions behind this moment. So I would really sort of craft a specific song just to explore things that were happening in that moment. And then when that happens, the lyrics are very carefully crafted to sort of suit that emotion and that experience. And when you're writing song lyrics, it's almost like you're writing a monologue or you're writing like a pattern of thought. And if you think about the way like, let's say you're thinking about a problem, right? You usually might start at the first by like, okay, I've got this problem, right? And then, okay, what are the different parts of this problem? How can I address each of these different parts? And then what's the final solution to how I move forward? And that's a lot of how like building song lyrics are like is sort of like stating the situation and then slowly working your way through it until you can find a way to move forward as a result.
Yeah, it always fascinates me because I think music is one of the most powerful mediums there is because you can experience every emotion possible through music. And so combining that, especially I think with this journey of what the story is telling, is just so incredible. I would think that it would heighten like that sense of love and loss. And for you working with that, I mean, you don't have to get into anything personal, but like, did it affect you in any profound way writing it?
It really did, quite honestly. What's really interesting is I think I have this really unusual relationship with this play because my initial exposure to it was when was in my 30s in 2008, and it was about a long-term relationship of people in their 50s and looking at that relationship in my 30s and thinking like, oh wow, these older people and the problems they have to go through. And in the years between when I started working on this and now, 17 years later, I'm in my mid 50s, and I look at I look at the problems that these characters are facing, and I'm like, wait a second, this mirrors my life in a lot of different ways. This mirrors my relationship in a lot of ways. It's and so like I have a whole new understanding now in my 50s about what these problems are, and they are not abstract to me anymore. They're very
Yeah.
concrete. And so when you're writing songs based upon situations that feel so close to your own life, a number of the songs in the show I do feel are confessional for me. They are drawing from my own experiences. They are drawing, there's a song in the show that's about having an argument with your spouse, and that is literally drawn from my experiences of having arguments with my spouse. So I feel like I have learned a lot through life that has been reflected in Botanic Garden. And I also feel like I have learned again and again from the characters of Botanic Garden in terms of how they negotiate through the things they have to work through in order to get to the next place in their lives or their journey.
I love that though, that, it is true. Like you don't realize until you get older, like certain things that when you are looking at them at a younger lens, you're like, that could never be anything that would ever, ever understand. And then you're
I
there and you're
know.
like, no, it's a lot easier to understand once you get there. And it doesn't feel as, I don't know, like old, I guess is really the word.
It's so interesting too. I mean, I work in professional theater. I'm a professional composer and sound designer. I probably do 25 to 30 projects a year. And the large majority of productions that I work on are about people in their 20s and early 30s.
Mhm.
And I mean, I was in my 20s and 30s once, right? So I totally remember those days and I can completely identify with what those characters are going through. But I feel like there are less plays about what happens when you have been in a long-term relationship for a very long time. You're older, you've experienced a certain amount of life, and you're dealing with crisis and comedy from that perspective. And so I think that's one of the things that makes Botanic Garden unique is that it does have a certain amount of wisdom in its perspective that is gained through hard experience, through living life and learning the hard way, the good ways to do things and the bad ways to do things. I do feel like the play and the musical as a result is very special because it offers a very different perspective from a lot of what's out there right now. Not that there's anything wrong with what's out there right now, but I just think this is it's a breath of fresh air, I think, for a lot of people. And I'm hoping that people will be able to identify with it no matter what their age group is. But particularly for older audiences who are frequent patrons of the theater in particular, I think there's a lot there for those people. And I hope they can gain something from it.
Yeah, because it is true that at a certain age, art stops like trying to make stuff for you, which is just so sad because it's not like you get older and you're like, I don't want to consume art anymore. So I love hearing that. And I do think, art should be for everybody and every age group should be reflected in everything. So I love
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're anything like me, once the holidays are over, you might start feeling like you've got like a big spending hangover. The drinks, the holiday food, the gifts, it just all adds up. Luckily, Mint Mobile is here to help you cut back on overspending this January with 50% off unlimited premium wireless. Before I switched to Mint Mobile, I didn't have the high-speed data or the very reliable 5G network. In fact, I'd go like a couple blocks away and I'd lose my coverage. But now with Mint Mobile, I no longer have to worry about that. Plus, no more hidden charges on my phone bill. And with plans starting at $15 a month, you can see your phone bill cut in like half. I switched, and so should you. Mint Mobile's end-of-year sale is still going on, but only until the end of the month. So cut out big wireless's bloated plans and unnecessary monthly charges with 50% off 3, 6, or 12 months of unlimited. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. This January, quit overspending on wireless with 50% off unlimited premium wireless. Plans start at $15 a month at mintmobile.com/fandom. That's mintmobile.com/fandom. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required, $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra, initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. And then I'm wondering, because a podcast musical, now that is just something, honestly, I haven't really heard much. I mean, I know, like plays and stuff like that and everything, but a podcast musical, how is that different? Like, can you take me through like the challenges and maybe the joys of it compared to like, say, other musical productions?
I can. One of the things that I have gained experience with, like, for example, my career, I started off as a theatrical sound designer and composer and worked almost exclusively in theater, doing plays. And then eventually I branched out to film score. But a real turning point for me was during the pandemic when live theater closed for 18 months. And suddenly all of us who work in theater were really like, wow, who am I if I can't work in the theater? I'm not devoid of creative ideas. What can I do? And particularly audio drama in podcasting, the idea of presenting a story only through audio is actually really interesting and more like theater than you would think, I think, because when you go to the theater, right, and you sit in a theater to watch a play or a musical, you know that set on stage is not a real piece of architecture, right? Like, that's all fake. It's just there. And it's really just there to suggest a setting to your imagination. But what you do as an audience member is you engage your imagination to help fill out the rest of that environment. And you become an active participant in the presentation of that story by imagining these people and their lives outside of what we can see. And that sort of impulse that you have as a theater goer is directly transferable to listening to an audio drama, listening to a story through a podcast, because now you only have audio to guide you through this experience. There's no visual. So in a way, it engages your mind in a similar way. You imagine what these people look like. You imagine their emotions, you imagine their actions, you imagine their environments, and you're able to get sucked into the story because, again, your imagination is engaged. And I think it really brings you into it. And I think what's really specific about Botanic Garden that lends itself well to an audio presentation is, as I said before, it's 2 people and a piano, but there's a lot of sort of fragmentation of both the vocal sounds and the piano sounds that are less dependent upon a scenery piece moving or how a costume piece looks. It's much more about your feelings and emotions and the things that make you laugh and cry. And communicating that through audio, requires a great deal of attention, but it also, I think, has a tremendous reward waiting for an audience member at the end of it, of really being able to experience emotions firsthand. So I'm really hopeful that this audio experience will be similar to a theatrical presentation, but hopefully intimate and emotional in its own way, that you'll really gain something from the experience.
Yeah, it sounds very much like, when you're having your own personal experience with art, your own personal experience where no one else is around. And so you can have a more intimate experience with that. And especially if you're using your imagination, it's kind of just like when you're listening to any kind of music.
and you are creating your own visuals in your mind, or it's making you think of your own memories. So that's really beautiful way to do something like this, to do a piece of art, because then you're able to, I think, get more emotionally invested in it in some respects.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. That's how I feel too. And we're actually really even pushing the boundaries of this even further. So in addition to the audio presentation of Botanic Garden the Musical, we've also partnered with Next Chapter Podcasts, who are presenting the presentation. We've made a 5-episode series called A Walk in the Garden, which will actually precede the premiere of Botanic Garden the Musical. And in this 5-episode series, I sort of walk you through, as a narrator, how I went through the creative process of looking at Todd's play, and we go through each song and sort of figure out, like, okay, here's the play version. Here's a possibility of a way to musicalize it, and what was the creative process of developing each of those songs. And we do this over 5 episodes, as well as sort of talk about the arcs that we made and learning as we went. So yeah, you have a very unique opportunity not only to experience this audio presentation, but go behind the scenes and learn the creative process of how it was generated, which I'm hoping will be interesting to people. It's been fun to work on, and I'm really excited to share it with others.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful, because I always think stuff like that's why I love interviewing people. That's why I love interviewing creators, because I think it's so wonderful to learn the process behind creating that piece of art that you love, and how, it really takes a huge group of people to create that art and to bring it to you. So I love
Totally.
that. That's amazing. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's
Thanks.
great.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I'm super excited about it. It's been a challenge to put together because, you know, the difficulty of writing Botanic Garden the Musical was like, okay, well, how do I write a musical? And then after I got done writing it, it was really like, okay, what did I do? I have to go back and figure out, like, how did I how did I put it together? But it has interviews with all of the actors who participated in the play, the workshop, and the recording of the audio drama, as well as the director and the playwright and myself. So yeah, in a way, I've been sort of describing it to people as like song exploder for musical theater, if you're familiar with that
Hmm.
podcast. So it's going underneath the songs to learn a little bit about it, and then hopefully by the time you get to the final presentation, you'll have a even greater appreciation for what you're listening to. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I would think you would. I mean, definitely. At least I know I would, and I would hope other people would as well. And it kind of just hit me that, you're doing something called Botanic Gardens. There's lots of plants, in a botanic garden, and flowers and everything like that. And you're dealing with life and death and healing and growing and changing. And I'm wondering, did that inspire anything at all? The fact that it was the Botanic Gardens?
It's interesting. The garden itself is never seen in the stage production. It's really sort of like a destination where the main crux of what we're trying to do is get people to leave the safety of the things they know to venture into the unknown. And so the Botanic Garden in this case really sort of represents the great unknown that you haven't explored yet. And what we're trying to get these characters to do, and hopefully inspire people to do, is to will themselves to get out of their comfort zone and to explore what's beyond them for now and make it their own. And I think the garden is a metaphor for that because, at least in our minds, the unknown is a positive. The unknown has many beautiful things that it can offer. But you got to be willing to take the first step and open the door to go there and find out.
I love that the unknown is a positive, because I think a lot of times we think of it the opposite. So I really like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially now. It
Yeah.
seems like, yeah.
I know we're living in a time that everything feels uncertain in a really
Yeah.
scary way. And I think that even through the most difficult times, the belief in a positive outcome in the future is the way to weather that. And so I'm hoping we can pass that on to others.
Yeah, definitely. Art is the best medium for that, I believe.
Yeah,
I
I
believe
agree.
art can change the entire world. So, yeah. And then lastly, Lindsay, I just want to know, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, what did you learn about yourself as an artist through the process of this?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, the first thing I learned is that I can do it. That, if you set yourself a task that feels impossible, I'm going to take a show that does not have any songs in it and somehow figure out how to put a bunch of songs in it. At the outset, you might think to yourself, like, there's no way. I don't know how to do this. I don't even understand. Like, the play wasn't written in this for this purpose. That creativity is really something that if you invest in it, it can ultimately pay off. So you have to have faith in yourself and faith in the future that you're going to be able to figure out the creative solution to a problem. I think that was a big thing for me. And then the other big thing is exploring all of the different parts of my marriage, which has now lasted for 28 years, the good parts and the bad parts, that a number of those things are not unique just to me. They are things that other people experience as well. And that by creating songs and working on a play that can speak to those things, maybe there are people who can be affected by it, changed by it, informed by it, you know. So like it was a really interesting moment because in my normal career as a composer and sound designer, essentially I look at myself as a craftsman. You know what I mean? You say to me, I need this piece of music. It needs to have this kind of style. It needs to be this length. That's what I do. I make things to measure. And it's rare that anybody says to me, like, write me a song about your emotional experiences. Like that's just not a thing that I do very often. And so this has been a wonderful challenge to dig inside of my own emotions and my own experiences in the hopes of illustrating situations that others might be experiencing as well, and hopefully be able to shed some perspective and some experience and some light on something that might feel mysterious or unknown to a person who hasn't experienced it in a way that I have, or maybe they are and they learn from it. That's my hope anyway.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much, Lindsay Jones. It's been so great talking with you and learning about this process. I always love these conversations. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you want to just remind everybody where they can find it and when it'll be released and everything like that.
You bet. So first of all, the 5-episode series, A Walk in the Garden, and then the final episode, the 6th episode, Botanic Garden the Musical, is being released by Next Chapter Podcast starting on February 6th. You'll be able to find that on all of your streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, the places that you go for your podcasts. Look for Botanic Garden or A Walk in the Garden, and you will find our series there. You can also visit botanicgardenthemusical.com, where we have a full information about the show, both the stage version and the podcast version. So if you're interested in anything Botanic Garden the Musical, please feel free to visit our site.
Wonderful. And I'll put that link in the show notes too for everybody listening. So check it out for sure. So thank you again, Lindsay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Erin. It's great to talk to you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again to Lindsay Jones for joining me to discuss his work on Botanic Garden the Musical. Once again, that is available now on all of your favorite podcast platforms. I am putting a link to that website in the show notes as well, so please go and check that out. To find all our past episodes and links to our social media, and also links to a contact us form where if you would like to be a potential interview guest on the show, you can fill that form out and that'll be sent to me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Head on over to our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com. Thank you so much for listening and take care.